Welcome back. We're going through the newspapers now, and we are joined by Lewis Oakley, who was in earlier. And I said that Aidan's going to be here filling in, but no, nobody told me. But suddenly, about half an hour ago, Andrew Eborn, who was obviously in bed half an hour ago, suddenly got the call and raced him.
I live just around the corner, which is a joy.
Brilliant.
And if the heavens hadn't opened, I would have been here even earlier.
Still raining outside?
It is, raining cats and dogs. There are poodles all over the floor.
And the reason he's just in a shirt, is because your jacket is completely sodden.
It is completely sodden. It's basically got its own little thing going on. But we'll get more dressed as the day goes on.
He's got his pyjama bottoms on underneath the desk.
I haven't got any bottoms on.
You don't want to see that.
Let's not go there. Right, we're kicking off with Lewis and looking at the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, who's saying that we should give up working from home. We should go back into the office because it's very, very important. In fact, she is setting an example.
Yeah, she's setting an example by walking down a flight of stairs to where her office is. I mean, she lives there. This is just not a point. But look, I think first of all, Labour need to decide what side they're on of this, because they've coming out a few weeks ago saying we give people rights from day one, you can work from
Flexible
home.
Working.
Now she's saying, well, I do 5 days a week, I'd do 6 if I could. And I think the thing about this that irritates me is she acts like it's for us. It's not for us. If we all go back to the office 5 days a week, that's more money spent on trains, that's more money in the coffers, that's more money spent on £5 sandwiches, all of that kind of thing. And that's what really irritates me about this. And I think, you know, there are lots of benefits to working from home. As someone that's got young kids, you know, I get to see them more. If I went into the office 5 days a week, I would see them for about an hour a day. So actually, one of the only benefits that came out of that pandemic was that now we've seen that there are benefits to hybrid working. You can be at home a little bit more. You can help out around the house a little bit more.
You can sit in your underpants watching Loose Women.
Hey, look at you.
No, but
that's a TV programme. Yes, I understand.
You couldn't do that, because if I was just sat in my pants watching Loose Women, someone would clock on, why is your work not getting done? Actually, I think that...
You should be judged, shouldn't you, by how effectively you're working?
It's got to be that, hasn't it? It's all about productivity. And if you've got a commute which takes you an hour to get to the office, an hour and get back, and you're miserable, and a job that basically you could do without wasting those couple of hours, then that's worthwhile. Charlie Mullins, who I've had on my show a few times, I know he's been on here, he always says, obviously, being a plumber, you can't work from home. You've got to be there. So it does depend on that. My background, as you know, is as a lawyer, and they basically divide up an hour into 10. So you get every 6 minutes you have to account for what you're doing, and that gets charged to a client. You work on... What I like is how effective you are. It's not about how much time you spend, but how effective you are, and that's the real reason. People got to be careful, though, because working from home, what's going to happen is that more and more things will get automated. As you know, I speak around the world as a futurist, and we talk about AI and how that's going to take over jobs. And Goldman Sachs said 300 million jobs are going to be lost to AI. The more that you say, I'm not going to go to work today, well, that's all right. Well, the computer will do it. Well, the more that particular job is going to get lost, so be careful what you wish for.
Well, I don't think we can fight against AI. It is going to happen, much in the way the internet did, and new jobs are just created around it. So I'm not here for all of the AI scaremongering, although we have to be careful. But I think no one ever talks about the benefit to businesses with work from home. I think, you know, it gives them more talent. They don't just have to have people that live an hour around their office. You know, you can have people from the north. You can actually level up. You can have people that are in Scotland that have jobs where their company is based in London. And I think that gives you a wider talent pool. That means that you can do more things. You can be more inventive.
You make a great point, Lewis, and you're right. I speak, as I say, absolutely, AI will put the AI into Britain. It's not scaremongering. I always say it's our greatest human achievement, but also our biggest existential threat. You are right about working remotely, but it's not just up north. What it also means is those jobs that you can do from home, actually all the people abroad, all the zillions of people in China, in India, in the Philippines, in Australia, could do your job for you.
One of my sons manages a team which includes people in Hong Kong, Germany, Australia, and he just sort of he works a lot from home, not all, but you know, he just is in contact. His team is all over the world.
It's true.
It's amazing.
And that's the reality. So if you start wishing for working from home, it depends on where that home's going to be, and it may not be in Britain, and that's the problem.
Depends on the industry as well. In journalism, there's no way junior reporters are going to learn a thing unless they're in the office rubbing shoulders with veterans who have been treading gravel and wearing out leather for decades.
I think you're right right about the new people coming in, and that is something that needs to be looked at. And maybe it is sort of every year that you've had with a company, you then get one more day where you can work from home. That seems smart to me. But also, speaking to young people now, I was speaking to a couple of teenagers last weekend, and their whole thing is about being digital nomads, so just working from their laptop and going around the world, and that's what they want to do. And I think we have got to address as well that there has been a sharp decline in living standards when it comes to what your wage can provide for you. You know, in the 90s, you could have bought a house for, you know, 6 and 5 raspberries, whereas now you could work all of your life, and you'd have 3 jobs, and it's still not going to pay the bills.
I must say, when I first read Rachel Reeves was saying that, I didn't clock, of course, that she's the Chancellor of the Exchequer. She lives in Downing Street. She doesn't have to go very far to get to the office at all. They really need to watch what they say.
It's incredible. It's all about they all say in optics, isn't it? And it's not just about this. I mean, Keir has got his own problems with his things and everything else.
You were going to talk about the...
I'm segueing for you. Look at that early in the morning.
Exactly. I could feel that, couldn't I? Because up till now, his rhetoric has been doom, gloom, despondency. We're all going to have to tighten our belts. We're going to have a very cold year. We're going to take pensioners' winter heating allowance off them and so on. Is he beginning to rethink his rhetoric?
Well, I think what's happening, and this is the glorious headline here at the Labour conference, we've got problems, but people will feel better off. Really? Come on. I mean, it's been a horrible week for basically two-tier Keir and his free gear. You work on the Frocky Horror Show and all this sort of stuff, and I think it writes itself, doesn't it? But you remember about the hypocrisy, and this is why I say he needs thousands of pounds on glasses, is so he can see that hypocrisy. Because if you remember at the dispatch box when Boris was having his Downing Street decorated, where Carrie doesn't live here anymore, but he spent a fortune on... he was like, oh, I'm about calling this out. The reality is all of those things are basically coming back to haunt him, and the optics on this do not look good. You'll also remember during the whole campaign, they say, we will not put up taxes for the working people. What are working people? So you fudge it and say, this is going to be income tax. We're going to fudge it another way. Taking away the winter fuel from certain pensioners is outrageous. So the rubbish about we've got problems but people will feel better off, they're delusional, absolutely delusional.
A change of tone from even a few days ago where Keir Starmer said he didn't want to preempt the budget because he didn't want to put the fear of God into people. I mean, I don't know what they've got planned for the October budget, but...
Well, they've got their conference, so I think they're going to want to try and put a positive spin on things. But, you know, I was saying recently, you know, they have got a massive majority. It's year one. You know, probably if you're a Labour strategist, you're thinking, look, have a horrible first year, do all the hard stuff, so then you've got 4 years to sort of build back up your, but it's all working now, isn't it, guys? There's no point them dragging out the hard stuff for 5 years. They may as well do it all now. No matter the optics.
I guarantee, Lewis, if you had an election tomorrow, they would not get back in power. The disappointment, the rating, the popularity rating has plummeted.
But the thing is, Andrew, they didn't win because people were allured to them. They won the election because people on the right hated the Tories. There's a split of the vote.
It was a negative vote,
They didn't win on merit. They've got a massive majority, but they got a lower vote share than, say, Corbyn did.
They did. It was much lower.
So, absolutely.
Interesting. Okie doke.
We've only got about 20 seconds.
Yes.
There's very little that we can cover that quickly. But Lewis, we're honouring our para-heroes. In fact, we will be crossing to Arnhem in a few minutes.
Yeah, Charlie Peters will be there
because the commemorations go on, and Charlie Peters, who was doing a grand job yesterday, will be doing a grand job for us again today. So don't go away. That's still to come.
Hello, welcome back to GB News Breakfast with me, Ben Leo, and, of course, Anne Diamond. And we're also joined by Andrew Eborn in the studio and Lewis Oakley to go through the latest
Lovely to be back.
Thank you very much.
What do you want to start with, Lewis?
Should we start with Fayed?
Yes.
So obviously this is a horrifying story, but more details now. The Crown Prosecution Service basically twice decided not to charge him, once in 2009 and once in 2015. And we're now in the position where we've got sort of 150 victims and witnesses coming forward, and you just think, how could there not have been any evidence? Because he's gone now, you know, that he's not going to face a co-uppance. But it has sparked a bit of a debate now. You've got cancer research that's coming out saying, well, should we give back the money that we've had from the foundation? Now, I very much feel, well,
No.
if you've taken that money, I think, you know, put it to good use.
Yes,
Don't
exactly.
give it back.
No.
Yeah, I mean, we had this debate after Jimmy Savile, didn't you?
Yes.
Because, in fact, amazingly, both men actually gave an enormous amount of money
Yeah,
to charity.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Enormous. I mean, we look back on it now and we think they were washing their reputation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
But nevertheless, this is money that people can use to do good, so no, keep the
absolutely.
money.
I'd be crazy to give it back, as you say, because otherwise you put the obligation on charities, basically, to investigate who the donors are. which wouldn't
Mohammed
make any
Al-Fayed
sense
was
at all.
very weird from that point of view because he was known for giving a lot of money to children's charities. He was also one of those people, you know, when occasionally there is a story that hits the news about a child who's dying of something terrible, but actually what he needs is this unbelievably expensive operation,
Yes.
and, you know, £500,000 would do it. He was the sort of man you could go to and say, would you? And he would.
Yeah,
Right,
he would absolutely. And the fact that there are a lot of people who do it outside of the radar.
yes.
I mean, he'd under the radar.
And
He would do some of that, and also the thing. I watched every minute of the documentary,
me too.
and the harrowing stories that the victims were talking about. Some of them worked for him for like 5 years, and you think, well, my goodness, why couldn't they escape? Why didn't people listen? What's going to happen is that it's going to get more and more unpacked.
Yes.
People are going to come forward. They're going to raise those questions as to what happened, what was the response.
Because for the first time, they're going to feel that they might at least be believed.
Yes.
Because while he was alive, he clearly had a way of shutting people up.
Yes, and interestingly, was the same. I was discussing this with Lewis in the break because we both work in PR, you know, the sultans of spin, and you looked at basically the response from Harrods and the statement and that sort of side, because it was rather like ChatGPT, write an apology, and that's what they did. They sort of turned around and said, look, it's terrible for the victims and things like that. You deal with crisis management. What
I
think?
well, I read that statement from Harrods and I just thought, oh, this is textbooks. All of the courses I've been sent on for crisis PR, and I thought that this is just textbook. We'll be studying this on the next one. So it is interesting how much they're having to distance themselves, but also show responsibility for the victims.
But they haven't denied it. You see, I was quite surprised by their statement in that most firms would say, well, we don't know all the facts, and until we do,
Yes.
we won't say anything. But they didn't. They were right up front and said, the Harrods of today is very different from under Al-Fayed, and we are already dealing with this. We've already made compensation payouts.
Yeah.
We are taking everybody seriously. I thought they were very proactive.
I think
well,
that's
there's
right.
no point them denying it at this point. He's not here, so you know.
Well, it is interesting, and it's a pity that he's not here, because, and this is part of the problem about defamation. He was notoriously litigious, and you can't defame the dead.
Andrew,
and that's the reality, yes.
Can I ask you, as a lawyer,
Yes.
so Keir Starmer was head of the CPS, he was Director of Public Prosecutions
Yes.
in 2009 when the CPS was looking at the Al-Fayed case the first time round. Downing Street says the case never passed Keir Starmer's desk.
Yes.
Would you have expected him, because Al-Fayed was a high-profile person,
was, absolutely.
the CPS has a dedicated high-profile department. Do you think that washes that excuse?
I think, again, it's always the optics on this. It's about communication. What they have to do is make sure there's sufficient evidence, and it's regardless of who's in the dock. There has to be sufficient evidence for a prosecution to go forward. And we heard one of the terrible stories from the victim who said they got the date wrong and so on and so forth, a little bit confused. And so the CPS decided in that situation that there wasn't sufficient evidence. What they need to look at is that whole process. And as I say, trust comes in on foot but leaves on horseback.
Yeah, but what Ben's after is, would Keir Starmer, as DPP, not have wanted to actually look over the case himself?
Oh, we should have done. Well, I don't know I don't know the circumstances, whether it actually came on his desk. And he should come out. In the same way as Harrods have been brilliant in turning around and saying, look, we support the victims, it is appalling, we're going to help in any way to make sure, and it's a very different thing. The optics on that are very good.
Even Lewis, if the actual file didn't physically drop on his desk, there is a separate department at the CPS for high-profile prosecutions. Surely, as the boss, you would have heard about Al-Fayed's case coming in, even at, a coffee chat.
Well, you have
at the
to make it
waterfall.
your business, and if you're the top or you're the boss in any business, everything is your fault. Like that's just what you get paid the big bucks for. So even if it didn't cross his desk, it's still him that should have, gone and found the file and put it on his desk himself. What worries me about this, and you say they've got a high-profile unit, is some of the evidence that I've read about here. It's like, well, you've got him banged to rights. Like, how could this not have... So was it that he was too powerful? You just thought, look, the lawyers will be too good. Some people are just untouchable, because if that's what it is...
By the sound of it, he clearly had a method of shutting things down.
yeah.
People were scared, and it's supposed to be without fear or favour.
Yeah.
You talk. I mean, some of the evidence from in the documentary, and it was unfortunately one-sided because you need to basically turn around and say, well, who else is there? Also, what I didn't like was the lawyers who were going for compensation were there, and I say you have to make sure justice is done on both sides. We need to unpack. There are lots of questions. Question everything.
OK. All right, Andrew Eborn, Lewis Oakley, thank you for your company this morning. Wrap yourselves up warm and dry, I guess, because it's going to be a bit miserable.
Oh, yes, I've noticed you've got your
Did you
jacket on
notice
now.
I'm suited and booted now for a Sunday?
He got very wet earlier rushing here, but thank you very much for doing so.